And welcome back to Inside the Ropes. We are joined by a very special guest today. He has had what a run in the WWE that he had. He was in FCW. He was part of the Nexus stable. He's been in the Royal Rumble. He's attacked John Cena. And now he's with us on Inside the Ropes to talk about his time in the WWE. Formerly known as Mason Ryan in WWE, it is Barry Griffiths. Barry, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, yeah, Barry, I mean, the run that you had in WWE must have been a bit of a whirlwind, and because it's interesting because you obviously started off on the British wrestling scene back in, like, I think it was 2006 kind of time.
Probably, yeah.
And obviously, like, I mean, now the British wrestling scene is kind of seeing a real resurgence, and it's, you know, a lot of guys are getting tryouts, or a lot of guys are getting opportunities that maybe weren't afforded to people like when you were starting to kind of get into wrestling. Can you talk a little bit about getting into it in the UK and sort of maybe how it's changed, I guess, and because I mean it must have been quite difficult. That's an understatement for it even to be a sort of option for you to kind of try out for WWE or to go there.
Well, I was fortunate enough to meet a man by the name of Orig Williams. I don't know how much you know about him. He's passed away now. It's been over 4 years now since he's passed away. But he was, you know, kind of a legend in British wrestling, especially in Welsh wrestling. He'd been promoting for over 50 years, and he had a Welsh wrestling show called Wrestlaw. You know, they had a lot of the old guys on there. You know, Haystacks and Regal, and a lot of these guys were actually Finley were on this. You know, so. He kind of discovered me. I went to a show, local show in a little town, and kind of met with him just through pure luck more than anything else. I'd never wrestled or anything before, and he kind of took me under his wing and kind of you know mentored me or whatever. Mm-hmm. So through him, I then got to I worked for him. I wrestled for him, and then I wrestled for Brian Dixon and All Star Wrestling. You know, because they were good pals and. You know, they'd known each other for years. So through him, I wrestled for Brian, and Brian took great care of me. And he put me on a lot of shows, and I wrestled a lot. You know, in the peak of it, I think we were wrestling something like 9 times a week over the summer. You know, so it was a great experience. And you know, like you said, back then it was a lot different. I think there was, you know, you had All-Star Wrestling with Brian Dixon, but apart from that, there wasn't that much else going on. You know. But now, like you said, like British wrestling now, being away, I haven't really, you know what I mean, known too much about it, but kind of leaving the WWE recently, I've kind of seen a lot more of it, you know, through people contacting me and looking for work or whatever.
Yeah.
I've kind of, it's on fire right now, you know, I think the shows are drawing well, and the talent there is exceptional, though, you know, and it's kind of showing now as well, more recently with, you know, kind of guys coming through for the WWE and being signed for the WWE. You know, obviously, you know, you've got Paige, who's killing it right now. You know, Adrian Neville, who's the NXT champion. You got Fergal Devitt, who's just signed with the WWE, who's obviously, I'm sure, going to be a big star as well. You know, so. In that aspect, you know, more recently things have just picked up, and you know we've got some quite big promotions there that are running good shows and drawing crowds and getting people, the stars from over there. You know what I mean? So it's very cool to see. Just to expand more on what happened with me is I was wrestling for Brian and I was wrestling for Orig, and I spoke with the WWE. Through a man named Drew McDonald. He was kind of scouting for them, and he'd tried a few times to kind of wanted me to get there, but I was trying to get a bit more experience working here before kind of, you know, going for a tryout or sort of meeting with them, you know, so that I would be a little bit more experienced in the ring. And then sort of it just kind of happened sort of naturally one time where I happened to be down in London. I'd just been filming Gladiators, I think a month or two earlier, and I was down in London filming some other show. I think it was the Paul Grady show, or something like that, and yeah, which was a fun show to be on. And WWE were in the O2 Arena, and I spoke to Drew McDonald, And he said, just come along, come meet them, see what they say, and what's the worst that can happen? So I was like, okay, yeah, why not? So I went there, and I met with John and Laurinaitis, and kind of he saw the way I looked and heard that Drew vouched for me, said that I've been working a while and this and that, and they offered me a contract then to sign with them, and obviously I bit his hand off at that opportunity, and so from there, just next thing I knew, I was over in Florida, and like you said, the journey began, and before I knew, I'm 4 years in. Like within a blink of an eye, literally seems like a blink of an eye. It's been 4 years, and I'm here talking to you now. I can just literally remember like it was yesterday when I stepped off that plane.
Take us back to that first day.
Yeah, well, like you said, I was lucky. I sort of had the look that they liked, so that kind of opened the doors. I feel a lot more for me. I was lucky in that aspect. But yeah, I just remember. I remember, strangely enough, going over there. I'd met one of the refs who's on the main roster now. His name is Mark Harris. And I met him when I went to Pittsburgh for my medical, and I kept in touch with him. And he told me that he was staying in like a little motel down the road. And he said, I'm just staying here till I find an apartment where I like. So I thought, okay, that's not a bad idea, That's not a bad way to go about it. So when I first got there, I went and stayed in this motel. It was called the Howard Johnson. It wasn't the best place I've ever stayed in my life, So I just remember staying in that place. Yeah, and I just remember the first day out because I only got there on the Sunday night, and I was starting on the Monday. So I must have got there. I don't know, 4 or 5 o'clock on a Sunday, and I was starting at 9 a.m. the following day. So I literally got to my motel room, put my stuff in my hotel, passed out because of the difference of the travel and everything else. I was exhausted. And then I was up at like 6 a.m. the next morning, and I think I was over at FCW by 7, like I think Dom was just about there or whatever. And I remember just walking through the doors because, I heard about FCW and all this, but, until you actually go in there and everything else like that, it was quite daunting. But I went in there and met with everyone. Everyone was exceptionally cool. Everyone was very nice and very welcoming, and it was just quite. How can I say? It was a lot to take in. Yeah, everyone, because the rings were bigger. The style is different to what I was used to from working with Brian and that in the UK. For All Star and that, and just see all these guys. Because there must have been 50 or 60 guys there probably, you know what I mean, in total, to kind of come in and meet everyone. You're just one out of that, you know what I mean, and trying to remember all these names and everything else like that was, it was quite interesting, but at the same time, I loved it, I enjoyed every second of it,
You mentioned a little minute ago that you guys would work in promos. Was it still Dusty Rhodes that was working with you guys at that point? And how did you find that whole experience of working in promos, given that WWE are so sort of because it is kind of like you almost need to be as good on the mic as you are in the ring. How did you find that whole process?
Yeah, it was quite strange to me because I think in the UK, by nature, we're a little bit more reserved. I don't know how you feel about this, but I think we're a little bit more reserved when it comes to kind of, putting ourselves out there and kind of being loud or whatever and being heard,
Yeah.
It becomes a little bit more natural for the Americans. But yeah, I'm sure I could probably cut one of the worst promos ever in my first ever promo class, because it's when you're not used to it, being in front of people and having that mic in your hand, it's quite daunting because you don't know what to say, when to say it, you know what I mean, when to slow down, when to go faster. It was quite, especially in front of a group of people I'd never met before, and I always feel like when you have to do matches in front of the guys, you know what I mean, the boys or whatever, or promos, that's much harder than, I'd rather do it in front of 100,000 people than the guys, because the guys, you know what I mean, I wouldn't say they're judgmental, but they're in the business and you know what I mean, they're almost obsessing everything you do, it's just the nature of the way they are. I'm the same when I watch people. It's not that I'm being harsh or whatever, it's just because we're in the business and that's kind of how we are. So it was quite scary, and just watching the guys again there, because a lot of people who do this, they haven't had prior training, any acting training or whatever, but to see people perform, and you know what I mean, at such a level, off the cuff most of the times as well, is quite crazy. So I just remember watching the guys and thinking, oh my goodness, I'm supposed to be that good, and I'm supposed to kind of do these skits or these promos that these guys are blowing me away with. It was a lot to take in, but Dusty Rhodes he's a very cool guy. I don't know how much you know about him personally, but he's a lot of fun to be around with, and he kind of helped me through it, and didn't make me feel too bad about probably stuttering and spitting everywhere as I cut my first promo, but he worked with me a lot, and and after a while I enjoyed it, after you kind of get over those nerves and kind of let yourself go in a way, because you've got to do that, otherwise you can't hold back, you can't be scared, you can't be worried, because otherwise what are you going to do? You're not going to deliver anything that's worth anything. So after a while I got more instead of, because we used to do it in the ring, you'd stand in the middle of the ring, the main ring at FCW, and everyone would kind of be sitting like they were the fans, whatever, and you'd have a microphone, and that's how you do it. And then Dusty, after you do it, Dusty would critique you, or tell you, try it again, do it this way or whatever. But he was always very cool to me, and I always enjoyed promo classes with him because he'd always make you laugh. He's a very charismatic guy.
In January of 2011, you would end up going onto the main roster, and getting aligned with the new Nexus. So how did it come about that you became part of the main roster, and how much notice did you have that you were going to be on that Raw show and that you were going to be, essentially beating up John Cena in front of 18,000 people?
Well, I think it's after that European tour, I can't remember if I was going every week, but I was going quite often to TVs, and I think I was doing a lot of live events as well. I can't remember, to be honest with you. Like I said, it's amazing how time flies, and a lot of stuff happens and you kind of forget a little bit of stuff. But I've been going, and there's been rumors for a while that I might be joining Nexus, but then they kind of fade away. And then at the time the day it happened, I thought it wasn't going to happen because I'd heard rumblings a few weeks earlier, and then nothing had happened, and there was no mention of it since. And then the day of, literally, it must have been 4 or 5 o'clock on that day, and obviously Raw started at 9 then. I think it was a 2-hour show then. Mm-hmm. But it was like 4 or 5 o'clock that day. One of the agents came over and told me what was going to happen, and and how it was going to happen as well. I couldn't believe it. It was I was a bag of nerves then, as you can imagine. To be involved in the main event where you're kind of debuting to sort of be kicking CM Punk in the head and hitting John Cena with my finisher, and kind of having the focus all on me was something else. It was incredible, to be honest with you. You can't even dream this stuff sometimes. So I was more than happy, and I was very excited, but also very nervous.
And oh yeah, I mean you've absolutely captured it there about what a big deal that is for that to be your debut and all that sort of stuff. And but I did wonder, because at that point, as this is going on, the NXT television show is still going on. Was there ever any talk of putting you on that, or was it always kind of, because I guess I can't remember exactly in early 2011 where that show was. I think it was maybe on the 4th season or something like that. But was that something that you were ever interested in, or were you kind of hoping that you would kind of get to the main roster, because it kind of seemed like you kind of bypassed that NXT thing and kind of made this really big splash straight away, and became involved in kind of the biggest angle on Raw, which was great.
Yeah, well, back then I think it was FCW back then. I don't think it materialized into NXT. I think that was later on. But yeah, well, literally then I'd be gone from. I'd fly out Friday morning, and I'd get back either Tuesday or Wednesday morning. So literally I'd get back and I'd go to FCW. I'd either go and do a little bit of training, and then the usually the Thursday show then, and then I'd fly out again on the on the Friday morning again. So it was kind of non-stop. So I think the main reason was that I was just gone all the time. That's why I wasn't on much then. We'd be doing all the live events. Not necessarily always wrestling, but we'd be ringside doing Punk's match with John Cena a lot, or his match with Randy Orton, and that was a great experience in itself. So I think that was the main reason that I wasn't around for that much, because I was literally gone all the time, and if it wasn't live events there, it would be world, international tours where, God, we traveled so much. It was unbelievable. I got to, go to some great places with that. It was awesome.
And obviously at that point as well, you're paired up with CM Punk in the new Nexus straight away. And from what you can tell, CM Punk sort of at this point, I guess, was beginning to get into his sort of time where he was frustrated with everything because his contract was about to run out that summer. But it always seems with Punk that he's always very much for the young guys and that sort of stuff. So what was it like working with CM Punk? Did he sort of get to mentor you guys a little bit? Did you have much interaction with him?
Yeah, well, CM Punk, he's obviously an exceptional talent, as I'm sure the world knows. He knows his business inside and out, and there's not many better guys that we could have been around to kind of learn from. A lot of times we'd learn stuff just by watching him. Just how he'd act, how he'd conduct himself. Obviously, during the matches, we'd see a lot of what he did, but then also we were lucky enough that we'd ride together sometimes, so that's kind of a great time to kind of learn as well, because you reflect on stuff and you have time when you're driving somewhere 2 or 3, 4 hours to talk about a lot of stuff. So he always had time for us. He always was great in that way, that he always made time, regardless of what was going on with him. He'd always make sure that, I always remember that he'd always ask, hey, you guys got any questions for me? Anything you want to ask me, anything I can help with? So, a lot of times he'd have the main event with Cena, and we'd have a tag match or a six man or something like that. So then on the way home, on the way to the next town or wherever we were driving to, we could ask him, what did you think of a match? How do you think we could do better? What, how can we improve? You know what I mean? We could ask him all these questions, and he'd always have time for us, because imagine it can be easy being a top guy with the WWE, because, you have a lot of pressure on you. There's, a big microscope on you, and you have a lot of obligations. So, but he was always very cool in that way, and he's just an exceptional talent, and just to be around him, like I said, was fantastic, because we just learned by osmosis of it's nothing else. You could only learn being around him.
So I guess when you sort of so you debuted, you did that, and then they did this storyline on Raw where Punk was going to go up against Orton at WrestleMania, and then there was the thing where you guys would all face off against Orton to have the right to accompany Punk to the ring, and
yeah.
I just sort of wondered, what was there ever talk of you guys going to be a part of WrestleMania on screen, or was it always kind of were you always kind of going to be written out in a sense for that same period?
No, that was always up in the air. We were, of course, we were hoping that none of us would get kicked in the head and we'd all make it to Mania. That was absolutely the dream, and kind of slowly, all one by one, we all kind of got the punch in the head, and the dream disappeared. But yeah, for a while, all of us, until it actually happened, we were all kind of hoping, and I was even hoping myself, because there was a few rumors that I wasn't going to get kicked and I was going to make it to Mania and be with Punk out there. But as I'm sure everyone knows, that didn't materialize, and unfortunately, we all kind of missed out on Mania. We were still there, but you know what I mean. To be out there would have been something else, and that was kind of a disappointment for all of us. But at the same time, we understood. We were all very new, and we were more. Oh, sorry, I'm stumbling over my words. We were all more than grateful for the spot we were given and everything the chance we were given. So, you know, it was kind of bittersweet. We were disappointed not to be there, but at the same time, you know, how can we complain? We've been on Raw for 5 minutes, and you know what I mean. We can't expect to all be on WrestleMania. So we got to be there, watch their match and everything, which was an awesome match, I thought. And you know, that was my first WrestleMania, and it was just unreal. You know, the scale of WrestleMania is just something else.
Yeah, it's massive, and I also kind of wonder, when you first got there and you're sort of on TV with Nexus, were there any sort of guys that you kind of, you know, picked their brain when you were there at TV? Were there guys that you were approaching and kind of getting advice from? Obviously, apart from Punk, but was there anybody else who you kind of chose or that was open to giving you advice and helping you through things?
Yeah, there was a lot of guys that helped me out. Most notably, it was, you know, Arn Anderson. You know, he was one of the agents, still is one of the agents, and I've had a good relationship with him from day one. You know, he's an absolute true gentleman and a class act. You know, and I always loved being around him because he is hilarious. He is one of the funniest human beings I know. You know, and he's so much fun to be around. But also on top of all this, you know, he's Arn Anderson. You know, he knows what he's talking about, and he has to be one of the most respected guys in the business, you know, definitely in the WWE. You know, he's highly respected, you know, and deservedly so. So, you know, he always had a lot of time for me from day one, which was great. So I would always, you know, ask him stuff, and he would always try and help me and take time to help me, which was, you know, was very cool. And then another guy who was great was John Cena, believe it or not. You know, he's a wealth of knowledge. He's been around for a while now, and you know, he knows his business. He knows what he's doing in there. You know what I mean? He has his critics, but for anyone who knows and anyone who understands and who's been around him, you know, John Cena is the WWE. You know, he's just so good at what he does. He knows his character. He knows when to do stuff, why to do stuff, when to, you know what I mean? He really does. So he was also very good to me. I would ask him. Sometimes I would sit with him during shows and stuff, and kind of ask him about the matches and stuff like that. And he was always great. He was always another. You know what I mean? These guys are top guys. They're at the top of this business, and for them to have the time, he would always ask me, "You got any questions? You got any questions?" You know, and I would always ask him questions, and he'd always take time to explain stuff to me. And I'm sure I asked a lot of stupid questions. You know, they say there's no such thing as a stupid question. Well, I'm pretty sure I asked plenty of them in my time there. But he was, you know what I mean? He was always very cool in that way, and always had time to answer questions. You know, and I always, like, I don't think there's ever been a time. You know, there's sometimes you ask people questions and, you know, you kind of get an answer and you're like, I don't know about that. But I don't think there was ever a time he gave me an answer and I didn't agree with him 100%, you know, and I didn't want to do it the exact way that he told me, you know. It's quite incredible, really, you know, and I guess that's why he is where he is and who he is. He is who he is, you know.
Someone that you also worked with in the new Nexus, which is kind of, it's funny to look back on now, but you worked with, well, he was known then as Husky Harris.
Yeah.
And now he's Bray Wyatt. Now he's one of the biggest characters in WWE. You know, he's turned into this kind of phenomenon character. And I just wonder, kind of, when you were working with him back then, what was your kind of vibe from? Because obviously he's a second generation star. What was it like working with him? And did you kind of see the seeds of the Bray Wyatt thing coming from? Did you sense there was more to him than the Husky Harris character?
At the time, not really, to be honest. Only because he was just kind of, you know, that's all he was doing. You know what I mean? It wasn't like he was doing anything else to kind of show anything different. You know, because he was kind of, he did the NXT show or whatever. And he was kind of thrown out there as Husky Harris, you know, which I don't know how much he liked that name or what, and kind of was, you know, that NXT show I think was kind of quite hard to be on, you know, because they kind of threw you out there and kind of it was up to you to kind of shine or make yourself known or whatever, you know. And I think it was quite tough for people to be on there. And then obviously he was then thrown into Nexus. It was part of Nexus along with Michael McGillicuddy, because I don't know if everyone remembers that's what Curtis Axel's name was before. You know, and you know those guys were in there. But I known him from like the first day because he was another one of the guys who was very nice to me when I got here and was very welcoming and was kind of part of a group of guys that you know I hang out with and we talk a lot or whatever and have fun with. So you know I'd known him from day one really since I was there, and he was always a really nice guy. So when I joined New Nexus with McGillicuddy, with Curtis Axel, you know, I was very happy because those guys were good people, you know, and Dave will tell me that too. You know, they were good guys. We drive together, so it was fun to ride with them, and you know, it was good to have those guys with me as well. You know, because we were all kind of in the same spot, in the same situation, you know, new guys just coming up, trying to make a name for ourselves, you know. So, you know, we all helped each other and we all had each other's backs, which was cool for me. But no, I had no idea that he had Bray Wyatt in him, you know, not whatsoever. He was always a very fun character, very, you know what I mean? I wouldn't say loud or obnoxious, but he, you know what I mean? He was always a big part of the conversations, and you know he was always fun to listen to. So then when after everything that happened, when I came back down here, he kind of was starting to work on this Bray Wyatt character, and I'd heard rumblings before I came back down to FCW, you know, as it was then. And then kind of slowly watched him develop this character. You know, he'd work on him on promos there every week, and you know, see it develop, and just to hear some of his promos that he did then, you know, he would just come up with every week. You know, it was just every week he'd blow everyone away. Literally, he'd be one of the last ones to go, and because you know nobody wanted to go after him because you could not follow him. You know, he was that good. It was just. You knew you were watching something special develop as time went on, and the more you got to see him, you know, because to come up with every week, to come up with the stuff that he did was just, you know, was brilliant. It really was. It was a pleasure to watch every week.
And I guess kind of the difficulty for you was you were kind of rolling along with this new Nexus storyline, and then obviously CM Punk's potential departure kind of scarpered the plans for that stable, and then you got an injury which kind of didn't help things for you. But I mean, was there any sort of long-term plan that you were aware of for the Nexus, or were you looking forward to kind of breaking off from that and kind of going on your own? How aware were you of any plans for you before that happened?
We weren't too sure what was going to happen, to be honest, because obviously, you know, leading us to Mania, we were all hoping that we'd be part of that, and then that didn't happen. And then we weren't too sure if we were going to disband after that, or if we were going to run, you know, for a little while longer. What we were, it was all quite up in the air. You know, we weren't very sure because obviously another thing with the new Nexus was we were the new Nexus. You know, it was they had the Nexus, then there was the new Nexus, so we kind of understood that it was kind of on its second legs almost, if you like. You know what I mean? It was having its second wind, and you know, we didn't think that we would be around forever. So, you know, we were all interested to see what was going to happen next, and we were all quite hopeful for what was going to happen next. You know.
And when you got down there, because I guess, you know, you're one of the only guys that can really talk to this, it's interesting. So you started off in FCW, and then you got a chance to spend some time in NXT. What for you as a talent were the main differences between being in FCW and being in the actual NXT when it had sort of fully been revamped into that?
Well, NXT was, you know, it was something that had a lot more eyes in it and had a lot more exposure than, you know, FCW, because FCW was kind of, it was on a local TV network here. It was called Bright House TV, and, you know, not many people saw it. So, you know, a lot of the guys who were on that when they would come up to the main roster, nobody had really heard of them. You know, it was just these brand new guys. So then when NXT kind of came along, and I'm pretty sure it was Hunter's vision to, you know, for this to happen. You know, for it to kind of be this way, that, you know, NXT would become what it is today. You know, which is a great show. That, you know, things had to change, obviously, you know, because there was a lot more expected out of us at that time. Beforehand, it was more, okay, you guys are in development, so you're developing, you know what I mean? You can kind of, you know what I mean? The eyes are not on you. But when NXT kind of happened, you know, there was a lot more expected of the developmental talent.
And obviously last month you were released from WWE. I mean, from what you can tell us, what was the reason for leaving? Is the door still open for you? What happened last month?
Yeah, no, the door. You know, I left with a lot of good relationships with everyone. You know what I mean? I have nothing but high regards for everyone there. You know, I created a lot of good relationships over my time there. You know, I got treated fantastic there. You know. To think that everything they did for me is just unbelievable. You know, I've been here 4 years. I came from a small town in North Wales, where I was working for my dad. You know, to travel in the world and, you know, entertain audiences of thousands and thousands and getting paid to do it. You know, they say when you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. You know, and that was very true with the WWE. You know, I loved what I did, and every second I was with that company, it really was great, you know, and I absolutely hope that one day I'll be able to go back there. But, you know, for now, they didn't have anything for me, and I've been there for 4 years, so, you know, it was just a case of a business decision, you know. They have to run the business, and I completely understand that. There was no hard feelings whatsoever, you know, and you know, I still text the guys there, you know, some of the coaches and a lot of the guys there quite often, you know, and I love their company to death, and everyone involved with it. And, you know, I hope there is an absolute door open there for me, and, you know, I can go away now and do my own thing, and, you know, kind of find myself and you know, maybe in the future go back there.
Exactly. Well, we hope to see you soon, and hopefully we'll have you on again one day, and we can talk about what you've been up to since.
Absolutely. I'd really like that. Thank you for taking the time, and I've really enjoyed this interview.
No worries. We'll take care, and we'll see you down the road.